Hello, hello. It's a fabulous Friday. Hey, everybody. Are you happy and ecstatic like I am to have made it to a wonderful Friday? Yes, it's a Friday, guys, all right? And it's an exciting day to be alive, eh? I would say so. Definitely an exciting day. Well, I am hoping that you're joining me because you saw a little snippet there and it got your attention. But before I do that, let me just say for those who might be browsing and don't know who I am, this is Charmaine Miller. I am the founder and definitely the CEO of Proactive Skill Developers, where we help educators work harder on themselves than they do on their jobs. So just consider me your running partner on this journey of continual learning and personal growth. Alrighty? Well, I just want to ask you a question. Have you ever had to deal with conflict in your school? I speak predominantly to educators, so I'm asking you. Have you ever had to deal with conflict in relationships at school? Have you ever had conflict, perhaps, well, I'm sure you had it in the home, right? Life continues to happen, right? Well, if you've had conflict before, I know it left you feeling somewhat numb or trying to figure out, should I carry on? Should I continue with this? Is it worth it? And it makes you question things, eh? But conflict is inevitable. It's a natural part of what we do and living because you're dealing with people. And that's the thing about it. You're dealing with people. So what do we do then when we have conflict in relationships? And let me tell you the reason why I want to talk about this today, just for a few minutes. I got a chance to have an interview earlier today with a colleague from California. Is a business lady who actually has several business owners and other women entrepreneurs who she coaches and mentors, and she wanted to talk to me because we had connected from another forum about how I deal with conflict when it comes down to working in business. And it was interesting because I'm thinking about it and I'm like, well, how do I deal with conflict? What do I consider? And I thought of things as I was talking to her, and after listening to what I said, I realized, there's a trilogy behind how to deal with conflict in relationship, especially when it comes down to the workplace and in business in general. So I want to give you those three things, okay? What are the three things we can look at in terms of what do we do if conflict arises? And here's the thing I want you to do. Examine your relationship. And first of all, find out if this is an opportunity for you to curate. I'm going to give you 3 C's, okay? I love alliteration, guys. 3 C's, curate. Now, when you curate something, C-U-R-A-T-E, you are organizing it differently. You are tweaking it, like how sometimes you have your lesson plan or an activity and you realize it's not working for one group, but you tweak it, you change it a little bit for another group because this one needs something a little different. That's what curate means. You're adjusting. Sometimes the conflict comes in our lives, in our work environment, because we need to adjust some things about the relationship. And what do I mean by adjust? Well, it could mean that all right, you say you just quit. Oh, interesting. Well, no, it could mean that there's something about that relationship that needs to change. The dynamics need to change. No, I don't think it's just a matter of throwing in the towel, but we'll get to that point in just a minute. When we say curate, that means then perhaps there's some boundaries that need to be put up. Who knows? Perhaps you have allowed certain things to go on. Let me speak to my educators. Let's say, for example, you are in a relationship with a parent and you've realized all of a sudden that parent is in the school setting calling you by your first name. Now, of course, in a normal setting, that might be okay. But in front of the students, it causes a bit of discomfort and it causes some issues. So a conflict might arise. And that allows you to examine the relationship and say, do I need to curate this a little bit? Obviously, you can't cut it off because the child perhaps might still be in your class. You still need to have a relationship with that parent, all right? But perhaps the dynamics of it need to change, all right? So the conflict may have come up for you because now you need to consider how you need to tweak it. You need to pull back, put up some barriers, put in some parameters, all right? These are the things you have to consider, all right? So look at it and see, is this something that I need to curate, tweak, change? And what is it I need to change about it? Especially if it's a relationship you cannot just quit on. You cannot just chuck it and say, forget it. No, that is not one. Even with your colleagues, think about it. Perhaps you need to curate some of those relationships. Perhaps not hanging in the staff room with this particular person, because you realize when you do, it leads you into saying some negative things that make you feel a certain way. You ever see that happen? As soon as you finish talking with somebody, you don't know what it is, but you feel down. And mind you could have been talking about, something totally different and oblivious to what you were saying, but all of a sudden you feel down. And every time you're with this particular person or having this conversation, you feel, the conflict is going to probably telling you that, you perhaps need to change something. So the first thing I want you to look at in this trilogy is ask yourself, is this a relationship that you need to curate? The second thing I want you to think about, is this a relationship that perhaps is bringing a cure? Now, what do I mean by cure? Now I want you to point within. Are we getting the conflict because there's something about us that needs to be changed? Are we looking at the man in the mirror? Do we have a selfish streak? Do we have a negative outlook? Do we tend to always, go into relationships and I'm thinking, what's in it for me? I don't know, whatever it might be. Sometimes the conflict comes for us to look at the man in the mirror. And when the conflict arises, we really see how we respond. And perhaps the response is not the best. It's not the ideal situation. So when the conflict comes, let's ask ourselves, is there something about me that needs to change? And a lot of times, I'll say 8 times out of 10, it has a lot to do with our response to the conflict that needs to change. And that's where the cure is. What is it in us that can be changed to let us go to the next level? Because perhaps there's access to another set of relationships that you can access, but it needs to be changed. All right. Sycamore Vision says defensive and untrusted. Yeah. Some people get like that. They have these tendencies, and it's difficult to go to another level of relationship if you are untrusting. And of course, we know there's certain levels of trust that have to be unlocked as you go up in relationships. You don't put all your guard down right off the bat. All right. So first of all, curate. Look and see what needs to be changed. Second thing I want you to look at is there some cure that is bringing for you? And every time I think about that, I always think about sandpaper. And it reminds me of something I shared with another group of business women. When you look at sandpaper, it agitates. You take it and you rub it and you rub it and you rub it, right? And there's some people who have the sandpaper anointing. That's what I call it. They have that sandpaper. They will rub you and rub you. Now, I won't say the wrong way. Sometimes they rub you the right way. Because what I look at is they agitate, and they bring some certain things to the forefront. It makes you evaluate perhaps how you're using your time, or should I be investing it in them? And they agitate. Now listen here. One thing I like about sandpaper, when you are finished using it, at least from what I see my husband does, it has to be discarded because it's no more use. It's smooth and it has no more friction to it. But guess what? We who are the recipients of that sandpaper, we are smooth and polished and refined, and we can move on. All right. So some people come to bring that refining for us. They bring that refining, and trust me, there's always purpose in the pain, but we have to endure the pain in the process so that we can get to live the life of principled life, I should say. All right. Or hold to the promise, whatever it might be. But anyway, let me don't go off course. So that's the second thing. The third thing I want you to think about is, and this is probably what Sycamore Vision was saying just a little while ago. Some of the relationship conflict that we encounter, it goes beyond curating, it goes beyond curing, it goes to the cutting. We are in the conflict because it's letting us know, hey, listen, this is not serving any purpose. This is not helping any. We need to cut ties. And unless the conflict came, you would have not even considered making that particular cutting. And it would be too smooth, and you'd have think it was okay. But sometimes the conflict let us know, hey, listen, it's time to move on, buddy. And especially that conflict keeps arising, and there's no growth for you. There's no nothing in it in terms of helping a mutual relationship. Hey, listen, it's time for us to go move on. All right. You have that sometimes. Now, of course, don't say that, oh, don't go to your principal and say, I need to cut you off because this conflict I'm having is constant. Now, you can't do anything about that. All right. But perhaps the constant is perhaps telling you maybe it's time for you to ask for a transfer. All right. Now, don't always run from the conflict. All right. That is not the issue I'm at all advocating. I want you to look at, if you can't see yourself growing, that's the thing. You need to be growing, all right? You want to be growing. That's the whole idea. We are looking. Hey, I see Leticia on this. All right. And she's the lady who I was speaking to all the way in California. She's on here live with me today about conflict in relationships. And I just felt so compelled to share this with you, what we talked about today. So first thing is look at whether or not it's a relationship that needs to be curated, all right? Tweak it. If it's not something to curate, then perhaps it's something that's going to bring a cure. That look within and see, is this something about me that I need to change? Am I a little too too callous with my time? Do I put too much energy into this? Sometimes look at it. We put a lot of energy into relationships and there's no reciprocity. The person on the other end, they ain't bringing nothing to the table. So you perhaps need to pull back. Hello, you need to pull back. Hey, Brady. You need to pull back and perhaps, be a little bit more guarded with your time. Yeah. So curate, cure within yourself. And then finally, if none of them really suits you, then cut it. Cut it. Those are the 3 vitamin C's I'm going to tell you that you need to add to your trilogy of relationships. All right. Look at it and see if anything in it for you. And trust me on it, there's always something to learn. All right. Whether you're in the school setting, whether you're in the office, whether you are at home, when you have the conflict in your relationships, I want you all to analyze it with these 3 things in mind. Look and see if there's something that needs to be curated in the relationship, some boundaries that need to be set, some things that need to be let go. Secondly, go ahead and ask yourself, is there a cure for me? Is there something that I need to change within myself? What do I look for? Sometimes we're looking for things in relationship, but we don't have it in ourselves yet. Ooh, I'm talking to somebody. We want people, and this is something my sister and I, she's on here now, we're talking about just today. We want other people to love us, but we are not loving ourselves. Come on. How could we look to the world for love in our relationships when we don't love ourselves? How could we look for respect out there when we don't respect ourselves? We have to look at the man in the mirror. I can't say that enough because trust me, I'm talking to you, but I'm speaking to myself, okay? Evaluate you. And finally, look and see if it needs to be cut. Maybe sometimes we just need to sever ties, start afresh, move on. Well, I hope that was of use to you and that you find a way to share it with some people. Let them know, send the link on to them. Let them listen to it. It could have perhaps saved some people's relationships that they're about to chuck. Or maybe it might let them get rid of some things that they need to. All right? We have some exciting things happening in Proactive Skill Developers that you definitely want to be aware of. And we are getting ready to launch our first digital course that's going to help 6th graders move to the next level. And it's going to be off the chain. All right, we are working on all of the modules right now. If I'm not in your inbox, like if you didn't get an email from me today, because I sent out a nice little token to all of my educators to help them in their classrooms. If you are not on my email list, then perhaps you may want to take a look at that. Thank you so much, Nat. My sister just put the link in there for you to look at. It's charmainemiller.com/poetry to paragraph. There's a little token that I'm going to give you for going ahead and letting me sneak into your inbox. And you could feel free to use that whole booklet of templates to help in your classroom. Or if you're not an educator, you can forward it to somebody who can actually make good use of it, okay? But once we get you in our email listing, you will be one of the first persons to know, actually the first set of people to know what's going on with our 6th grade GLAD bootcamp experience. All right, so stay tuned and remember, I don't want to ever close without letting you know to keep learning and growing. You know why? Because what we learn becomes a part of who we are. And like Einstein said, if we stop learning, what happens, folks? We start dying. So, never stop learning, because life, as you know, never stops teaching. So until next time, to your success.